everyone. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first session of Human Resource Management, and to all the students, I welcome warmly and look forward to a very good session ahead. So today, our session is all about concept, evolution, and of human resource management. So typically what we are going to cover is definition, evolution, objective, scope, nature, and the components of HRM. So let's first try and understand what is HRM, what is human resource management. There have been multiple definitions to human resource management. However, these are some basics that you can learn and remember, and then put it through from your terms to give a better understanding of human resource management. So as the word suggests, human resource. So any organization or any institution, for that matter, a family, is also a constituent of humans. And all these humans together make a family, make an institution, make an organization. And hence, it is extremely important that we take care of our human resources, because without these resources, you cannot have an organization. And if we go through the bookish or many definitions that have come by, it is a process of acquiring, developing and maintaining, and then retention of human resources in an organization with strategic objective of achieving the organization goals. A few of the terms that are very, very important in terms of the goals is acquire, develop, maintain, and retain. These are the four pillars to a good human resource management. And acquiring is all about how we can attract and recruit the best of the resources. Develop, it is how we can have our resources who are already there with us, who can skill themselves up or who can develop themselves as an individual within the organization and stick around with us, and we can actually have them as assets to the company. So this is basically to elevate people as our assets within the company, and it's one of the strategic movement. Maintenance, when we talk about maintenance, it is all about what is it that we are empathetic about our people, and how people will feel more attached to the organization. And those are the activities, the welfare activities, the conditioning activities, and some of the employee friendly initiatives that are taken through in the organizations are all about maintaining them. And retention is how we can ensure that when somebody joins us, when they join us, they're attracted towards the organization, and how they can continue to be attracted in the similar way and continue to be loyal with us and sticking around with organization, like it used to happen earlier days, that people would work and stay in an organization for almost 40 years, 45 years. Nowadays, that's very low numbers. But is there a possibility? Yes, there can be a possibility. So how and what are those ways to motivate people and engage them to keep them along with us? Hope these are simplified enough for all of you to understand. Let's go ahead to the next one. So these are, I've given you some or two basic definitions by two different individuals, Dan Cesar and Robbins and Wendell French. However, there have been multiple other experts who have also defined, like Edwin Desler and Story as well. So Story, these are there, and this is there in your handouts too. So we can share those materials with you, and you can take a look at that. So mainly, if you see, human resource management is planning, organizing, directing, and controlling of procurement, development, resources to the end that individual and societal objectives are accomplished. Now, if you look at it, this was by Edwin B. Flipper. Similarly, DeCenzo says HRM is concerned with the people dimension in management. Since every organization is made up of people acquiring their services, developing their skills, motivating them to higher levels of performance, and ensuring that they continue to maintain their commitment to the organizations are essential to achieving the organizational objectives. Now, as an organization, as an institution, every company, every institution has its own goals to flourish. And in order to have them flourish, who are the backbone? The people are the backbone. And if you look into this particular definition, the four things are very, very clearly coming out. Acquiring, sorry, acquiring, that is attracting and recruiting the right kind of people, and then developing their skills, then motivating them or maintaining them, and then getting them to continue to engage with the organization. So if you look at most of the definition, these four pillars are pretty much embedded by each of the experts who have actually given the definition. Um, so this is for all of you. You guys can read that out for Wendell French. HRM is a systematic planning, development, and control of a network of interrelated processes affecting and involving all members of the organization. It includes human resource planning, staffing, performance appraisal, compensation and benefit, training, development, and labor relations. Now, here, if you see, it has just gone a little deeper into the jargons that are used normally in the departments. However, again, the four pillars are still clear. We move over to the next slide. So, how many of us have actually gone ahead, understood a little bit about evolution? And let's think, what is evolution? Evolution is when something begins from a stage zero, where and how it develops through time, and that's called as evolution. So similarly, HRM as a vertical, or human relation or human resource management as a concept, also has evolved across time, evolved through organizations, evolved through experts. Why? The concept has changed from time to time. Now, let's look at the first piece, the commodity piece of it. You know, in terms when the key points, HRM did not emerge overnight. It evolved over centuries in response to changing economic, social, philosophical conditions and the roles of the workers. Now, for example, earlier, if you look at a particular industry in a manufacturing sector, the workers that are involved within the industry, within the factory, versus the ones who are involved into the verticals of sales or the verticals of legality or commercials or procurement, their work and their roles would be different. So depending on the roles also, HRM has actually evolved. So similarly, when you look at different industries, somebody working in the manufacturing industry versus somebody working in hospitality versus somebody working into the service industry. So all these industry-wise also there has been multiple changes and evolution that has happened. And let's get a little deeper down into it and try figuring out what is what. So each of these stages basically reflects the dominant view of workers at that time in the history. So stage A and B represent the industrial view of labor as a commodity or factor of production. So why labor as a commodity or factor of production? Because at that point in time, when production and manufacturing was the key, if you see, mostly labor were considered with number of hours to what they produced, and hence they were linked to the factors of production. So hence commodity wise. Similarly, stage C and D marked a humanitarian turn in anywhere between. So if you look at stages A and B, it was factor of production, it was commodity, the guild system and scientific management, everything turned around and was revolving around uh, the product, the production, the industrial era where every individual was considering himself or herself to be a part of the product and number of and the calculations were all done basis the commodity or the production that was happening. Slowly, the focus turned in section C and D towards a humanitarian factor, especially in the early 20s when the plants would start having trade unions. And then these leaders or the unions would work along with the plant management or the management of the organization to fulfill the welfare demands of every labor. And that's where it evolved into the paternalistic methodologies. And slowly moving to the humanitarian piece of it in 1930s, 40s, where here I've given you one example of Hawthorne studies. If you move and look at the Hawthorne studies, it clearly gave a complete backup to the human factor as one of the focus into the human resource management, as to their welfare, their behavioral aspect, and as human, what is it that can be more comfortable from the employee perspective, and which can be a win-win for both the employee and the organization. Stages E and F. E is typically to talk about 1950s to 70s, again, which was more focused on the behavioral science of it. Now, when we talk about the behavioral science is all about personality, how we drive a certain personality to a certain behavior, and most of the job descriptions became a framework which was more of behavioral science behind, and in front it would show up the kind of work one was supposed to do, what was the kind of behavior that they were supposed to display, and so on and so forth. And as far as the evolution between in the behavioral HR goes, a lot was worked out during 1950s and 1970s within the organization, where many organizations moved from commodities and factor production or just paternalistic to behavioral aspect and to humanitarian aspects. Again, having said that, not all of it changed completely. And certain times you would still find a lot of organizations typically still sticking around to a blend of behavior, humanitarian, and commoditized methods. However, most of the larger organizations mostly dwindle on the behavioral aspect and the emerging piece of it. Now let's talk a little about the emerging piece. What according to you is the emerging method of human resource management? The emerging method currently, the most emerging method is how I can make my resource feel at home, even if the person is working. So that's the shift that has come by. Why? Again, depending on the kind of skill sets that are required, depending on the kind of work that we have, we also need to encompass the factor that every individual who is there in our organization must feel safe and must feel comfortable and must feel attached to the organization. Only then they will be able to be productive. They will feel that they are going to stick around and they will give their best for the company to achieve the company's objectives as a whole. Now, as I said, stage E and F shows the rise of behavioral science and strategic HRM. And A and C will examine, we shall examine in more details about all these stages as we go ahead in our discussion today. So one of the questions for all of you, you all can take a note of this question. Why does the prevailing view of workers matter so much to management practice today? All of you, please take a note. Why does the prevailing view of workers matters so much to the management practice today? Now, here is little insights to every concept that we talked about in terms of evolution from A to B to C to D to E to F. Okay, so we will have more going ahead. So let's try and understand the first piece of it, A, B, and C. Now, if you look at the pre-industrial revolution, the commodity concept, the guild system. This system basically talked about precursor to personnel management. What do you mean by precursor to personnel management? It is not personal as in me, my personal. It is personnel as in individual who is there and who is working as a resource to the company or number of hours. So when you go to most of the factories or to most of the hospitals or a particular industry or any organization, you will see a work chart or hours chart. And that hours chart typically gives worker A from this time to this time, and worker B from this time to this time, and weekly off. So, you know, when you're looking at all of those, the guild system precursor to personal management, individual management bases the individual's work, the individual's role, and the individual himself or herself also was a prerequisite in this guild system. And these guilds had definitely had the selection method, the training method, and the rewarding the workers as well. And this was typically a traditional method where you reward the best producer, the best manufacturer, or the you look at the speed of the individual as well. And at the bottom of the pyramid, when the laborers are working in any of the organization, that's how their KRAs are devised, and selection, training, and rewarding is also through the same framework. So in the pre-industrial guild system, workers had structured training and defined rules, but labor was still fundamentally transactional. Now, when we say fundamentally transactional, it depends. Again, would you be more comfortable getting a contract to hire labor or a daily wage? So they were flexible. However, a regular worker would be the one who would be there within the organization and would be on the payrolls. So workers had no rights, valued solely for their output. As I earlier also put down, it was very traditional. Only the value was given to the commodities or the production or the output done by the workers. Foundation of early employment relationships. Now, early employment relationships, earlier also there would be an employee and employer relationship, but however, it was more of autocratic. Even today, there are many organizations who still follow the same. However, most of it has gone decentralized now, and the relationship is more of horizontal than kind of vertical. So the approach now is many a times very, very flat. Organization structures have also gone flat, not like earlier, the bosses and the lower halves, and there would be a um, uh, strict way of communication as well. You go to your boss, then the boss goes to his boss or her boss, and then it would reach the top level. Nowadays, it has changed quite a bit, but initially, as you see in the pre-industrial revolution time, it was more structured in terms of hierarchy. Now let's go to the factor of production, which was more of industrial revolution era, and employees were treated like land machineries and materials. Mostly you would see that they would be treated as one other resource, that's it. But they would not be treated as much through empathy as humans, which changed ahead of time. So Taylor's scientific management and the scientific approach, systematic approach, talked about proper selection and training to maximize productivity. Again, if you see, the productivity piece is still intact even here as well. So the focus again is on the productivity and not on the human side of the personnel. Work standardization and time motion studies focus on efficiency over human well-being. Why we talk about this? This is, if you look at most of the labor work that is being done, the focus is always on the efficiency piece, and efficiency is not typically effective. So efficiency is pertaining to time. What is the productive work that the person has done? Let me give you an example here. You can be working for 8 hours, but are those all 8 hours equally productive to achieve the organization's goals? So there are peak hours, there are lean hours, there are negative hours as well. Now, giving you more deeper insight into it, these could be, some of us are very early risers and we like the morning. We are very productive in the morning hours in the first half. The second half goes slow and lean for us many times. Similarly, the night workers, they are more productive towards evenings and afternoons and less productive towards the mornings. So as an individual also, and as an HRM personnel, you need to understand whether my resource is going to be productive and highest productive during what time, and what is the lean of the person. And it is also driven, there's a very gray line through for the emotions that time as well. So in the factor of production piece of it, that was not considered. What was considered was, is the person efficient enough to give me 10 products in an hour or 20 products in an hour? So it was like a product and a work competition. And every time this competition would continue. So the more the competitors, the organization would feel the better the productivity. However, there would always be, again, another negation to the quality. because of the human resource issues that would come by of health, of wellness, and so on and so forth. And today there is a complete shift where companies are also taking care of their human resources through wellness initiatives as well, which is one of the welfare programs. Now let's move into the paternalistic concept. In this, workers formed trade unions for common interests. So they came together as a cluster, as a community, and they would form trade unions. And as a part of the trade unions, there were discussions from the worker representation, from the management representations, and then there would be a dialogue to continue the relationship, which would end. The idea was this should end up in a win-win situation, not into a tussle. However, I think we have known quite a bit of how this brought on a tussle in many organizations. However, many flourished with that. Employers provided welfare schemes to the workers, fatherly protective attitude by the employers. Employer-employee relationships became more personal through this. Recognition, welfare affects productivity. Again, when as humans they felt more attached, obviously there would be a rise in productivity or fall in productivity. However, with the trade union, if there were some differences between the employer management and the union leaders, then also it would have a negation on the productivity too. So not to miss on that piece. So again, just to recap quickly, in pre-industrial guild system, workers had structured training, defined roles, but labor was still transactional, as I said. And this led to many a times, Frederick Taylor's scientific management treated workers as units of production and efficiency, above all the other perspective. So this led to scientific work dissatisfaction, giving rise to trade unions, which formulates the stage C typically. And employers began providing welfare benefits, housing, canteens, medical care, education. While seemingly caring, this was largely motivated by recognition that healthier, more content workers and high productivity. Now, into this, one of the thoughts that could rise is employer paternalism genuinely caring, or is it sophisticated form of a control? So I think it's just food for thought for all of you. Do you think that in the paternalistic concept, was the love, care, and the welfare really from the perspective of sympathy, empathy, or was it just another way of controlling the resources or the humans in a different way? So again, it's food for thought for all of you. Now let's go over to very interesting stages, modern evolution of HRM. Now in this, we have the first bit, which is the humanitarian concept, 1930s Hawthorne era. And as we have just gotten a little idea, employees hold ineligible rights as human beings. So this was the first time employees or human resources were considered as human beings. So this was a breakthrough from A, B, and C, actually. Employer duty, protect social and psychological needs. So every individual has certain psychological needs. There are people who work for recognition. There are people who work for satisfaction. There are people who work, though everybody works for one base concept, which is money, but money is not everything for every human. So this was the first time in the Hawthorne era where companies, where organizations really thought about humans as humans. And I think that is where the real shift happened into the human resource management division of every organization. And within these experiments, there were informal groups of that mattered, and McGregor's theory generated HR interests and social satisfaction equally important as pay. So, we did talk about this, that though everybody works for money, money is not the only factor. There are many other social and psychological factors which drive people to be engaged with organizations, to be engaged to work, to be engaged with likely like-minded people around. So all those factors were taken into consideration through these pieces, especially in the humanitarian concept. The Hawthorne studies, Elton Mayo in 1920 to 1930s, were a turning point. They revealed that the workers respond to social attentions, group dynamics, and sense of belongingness, not just wages and physical conditions. And this was revolutionary and gave birth to human relation movement, and where, especially from the humanitarian perspective, it was a complete turnaround from what you typically called as product, commodity, resources, number of hours, to humans. And once there was these human pieces intacted, that other than basic good environment in the office, good infrastructure, or ease of doing the production, or ease of doing the work, other than these, there is always a response and attachment to how or what type of team I am with, who are my colleagues. Am I having do I share a great relationship with my bosses and colleagues around? And what is my click with them as a friend, as a colleague, or is it more formal and hierarchical where I need to think twice before I get on with a discussion with somebody around me? So those factors came into picture, and a lot of social attention. Am I able to make friends? Am I able to make myself comfortable in and around my team, in and around my colleague, in and around within the vicinity of my work? And those factors held a lot more in terms of productivity from the organization perspective, where they really saw that not very many bothered about how much money they make, but they really bothered about what is my relationship and what is my attraction as an individual, as a human being that I share with my organization that I work. And that was the one which decided on the belongingness. So hence you will see people who spend some time and are long enough with the organization, they have a sense of belongingness. They represent the organization everywhere they go, and it makes them feel proud of this identity that they carry. And I think that's where most of the uniform based organizations actually drive their human resource. Now let's go over to the behavioral and HR concept, which came into being in the 1950s and the 1970s. Once the fundamentals and the generic concepts were taken care between the 1930s and in the Hawthorne era, there was a little more deep dive that was looked upon. And these little more deep dives were all about analyzing the human behavior in an organization. What is the motivation for an individual to come to work? Why would somebody come to work driven? Is that only money? Is there anything else that drives them to the organization? And I can give you a very good example. Companies like Google, Yahoo, and many more, especially the IT companies outside India, they generally do not have any constraints of timings and hours of work. It's only tasks, and there are certain logins and the tasks that are there. So you log in, you see your task for one particular shift or one particular work day. And basis those tasks, you can decide on your time. You want to work, come to office anytime, work, finish the task, and move. And that actually shifted the real peak of productivity, because the Gen Z and the current younger generation, which is very IT handy, always looked for flexibility. They did not like time foundation. And these companies made that change, and they are currently clocking a real great productivity. So not all organizations can take that on. However, this was one of the examples to give you a faith on the behavior piece of it. So looking at the behavior of the current generation, they made the shift, and the shift actually worked positive for the organization in achieving their goals. And it also made them to attract more younger and great talent to their organizations. Employees, say here the concept of employee being one of the assets came into picture. That employees are the assets to the organization, and they should be taken care as if we take care of our assets who can continue with us for a very, very long time. The two-way communication or the MBO practices. Anyone who has a little idea on the MBO practice? It's mainly the two-way communication where the organization would have town halls, would have direct communication with the top management and the people on the ground, people in the ops, and so on and so forth. And it would be a normal networking and basic interaction, nothing very hierarchical and one way. And neither it would be top down. It would be just a flattened conversation of goods, bads, what is it that can be done better. Feedback was one of the concepts that came into being from here. There were, as I said, there were quality circles. Quality circles are basically smaller committees that are made through within the organization's different departments to make sure that any grapevine or anything that is cooking up can reach the right people at the right time, and things can be cleared off. Similarly, the roles of informal groups came into picture. There was one more concept of line HR which came into being in many organizations somewhere in the 2000s and in the 1990s and the 2000s, the millennial time, where you would have the department separate as a shared back partner. However, there would be some representative who would be there during the operational hours sitting on the floor with the employees as well. So those concepts were all a part of these initiatives of rolling out informal groups, rolling out the circles or the committees within the um, ops or the within the production departments per se. Now, if you look at the E base of it, it also encompasses the motivation which is there in the Maslow's hierarchy. It considers Maslow's hierarchy of self actualization or self satisfaction, whatever you can say, from right from the bottom of the pyramid, and Herzberg's theory as well. McGregor's X and Y theory of personality also comes into being in these portions. Now, from there came up the concept of emerging strategies, and this is typically very contemporary HRM, where HR sits at a strategy table, contributes to the competitive advantage through people, and the factors like discipline strategy or the ESOP stock membership is the ESOP strategies, partnering strategies. Now this is very, very common in the startup arena nowadays. If you look at a company which has started say 5 years ago or 7 years ago or 10 years ago and falls into the bracket of a so-called startup and has reached a certain level where they are currently 1,000 or a 500 employee base. The initial team which worked as employees move from not only they are the employees, but they are also partners in the company through the ESOP that is shared. A share of the company is shared with these employees who have been there right from the inception of the company. And many a times these strategies help the companies to attract the best of the assets as human resources and get them to stick around, because you feel the belongingness, where you feel that the company, I have a stake in the company and I must contribute towards the company. So ESOP is one of those kind of memberships that a lot of company carry nowadays, and it holds a lot of value for the youngest of the generations now. Um, HR participates in business strategy sessions. So earlier, HR would be segmented, separated. Nowadays, it's, as I said, as a part of the line HR, they would be more in front and they would take on the baton along with the team which does the business strategies, which does the business in the front line as well. So they are connected to the sales team, to the ops team, to the quality team, and for that matter, to the teams that are there as divisions or verticals within an organization or within the group of the organization. So, and this is to bring in that belongingness, to bring in, to understand the deep down thought of whether my resource is going to stick around with me. What is it that I can do best for them that they are also going to give their best to the organization and we all grow together? So competence mapping, career and performance management, KPIs, KRAs, all these concepts are put into action in this emerging concept or emerging era and very contemporary modern era, because every KPI and KRA differs and they are customized basis the role, basis the individual's work, time, so on and so forth. Somebody who does a night shift and is working as as say a quality control versus someone who is a QCA in the morning for a different process will have differential KPIs and the KRAs. So similarly, these are very customized, very flexible, and extremely human resource friendly as well. The other concept that came into being from the HR perspective was the ESAT piece of it, employee satisfaction. So each year or every 6 months or every quarter, there is a survey in many multinational organizations on ESAT, the way we have the customers DSAT and CSAT, customer satisfaction, customers dissatisfaction. Similarly, there is a drive for ESAT also. And through that, HR as a team and the business as a team devises strategies to make shift and keep up with the human resource interest in the organization. And nowadays, it is one of the very important strategies, because getting the right talent, right productivity, and making people stick around and not leave the organization is the key to majority of success. And people as source of competitive advantage, as I did talk about this currently, it's very important that as organization, the key is people. If people with best of the talent, with best of the loyalty are there with us, they will always make a difference to the company, to the growth, and to the success. And it works both ways, for the people and by the people as well. Now, I have a question which probably all of you can again think or take note of. What skills does a modern HR professional need currently, and in compare, or that was not needed in the 1950s? So if you really compare, so what are those skills, the modern skills of HR professionals that were there or not there in the 1950s? Now, one of the ways to look at it is currently the skills. One of the skills that could be required would be analytical skills or data analytics, or something to do with change management, which was probably not there in the 1950s. The concept of change management and data analytics were not required then, because probably there weren't any systems in terms of computer systems which were being used at large. But currently, data, computer, cloud, AI, other tools are there, and mostly everything is digitized. Hence, data analytics is a skill that would be required as an HR professional, more than that time of 1950s HR. So, barring the skills as an HR professionals, you also need to look at some modern skills and modern skill set that can actually help you move on in terms of successful HR professionals, to be successful HR professionals. Okay, let's move on to the next piece of it. So what is the difference between personnel management and human resource management? So here are a few of the pointers for all of you. So these are the dimensions. The dimensions are the focus areas, basically. So if you look at it, what are the basic criteria or dimensions? And then you have the pointers of personal management and human resource management. So dimension could be focus for personal management. The focus is on administrative and operational aspects of the individuals and the people or the workers or the resources who are working. However, from human resource, it's a partnership between the company and the human resource perspective, as in they are never considered as employees. They are always called as HBAP partners, which means human resource business partners. Why? Because they are considered as the same to the organization, because they are the ones who will actually give the right inputs to keep up with their human resources. So hence HRM is always strategic business partner. The focus is never on employees and workers and resources and number of labor hours or number of official hours. Nature in terms of personal management, it is always reactive, response to issues, response to problems. They are proactive, they anticipate challenges, as I said, through employee satisfaction surveys or through line HRs, through informal groups, discussions, or for that matter, any quality circles or any other initiatives within the organization informally. They would take those information and be proactively working on the challenges that they foresee in future. Employees are always a cost and input factors. Employees are always valuable assets and resources, or valuable assets to the organization. Orientation is task and rule oriented. Here it is goal and performance oriented. So you will normally see, as a personal management professional, you will mainly look at and calculate from the perspective of task, production, whether sticking to the rule, no rule, and so on and so forth. Here it is more of goal and performance, and each of these goals is actually bifurcated and divided from the organization's goal to the management goals to the which is attached to the vision and the mission of the organization, and then percolates down to every single employee and individual who is working within the organization. And that is further fragmented into a key performance index, which is called as KPI, or key result areas, which are called as KRA. So all of you can take notes, KPI and KRA. So it is basically, when you get a sheet like so, KPIs and KRAs, it is nothing but the goals and the vision and mission of the organization, which is bifurcated and put down in form of KPI or KRA for every individual who is a part of the company. You know, in whatever position they are, it does not matter. Every position has a KPI or a KRA. Development, training for current job only. Here it is holistic for a career development. So as we have spoken earlier, that it helps, you know, the human resource management actually helps an individual to move ahead within the organization, to uplift and develop their own skills, move ahead and get success within the organization. There is a growth path. And as a part of the KRAs and the KPIs, these growth paths are also discussed from time to time to keep up and understand the interest area of the employee or the individual. Motivation, it is external rules and incentives. Here it is mainly culture, value, engagement. Engagement is a very, very important word nowadays for all of you to know. Engagement does not mean once a while. Engagement is every time, anytime. So please understand this engagement is a very, very key word in human resource management. And every time you feel that I need to engage, it cannot be just one-off initiative. you need to, as an HR professional, you need to keep thinking, what is it that I can do in terms of initiative, in terms of strategy, that my people or the people within the organization feel that they are engaged with us every time and any time. HR role supports the functional department. This is strategic and transformational partners. Hope this was clear. In anything, we will be anyhow sharing more materials for your references. Okay, here are a few pointers for you all to take on. Evolution and development, HRM in India. Historical journey of HRM in India. This is more of theory. So, we have just made it for a good reference point for all of you. This is there in your books. And basically, it started all with the industrial relations only, labor dispute focus, and then moved to personnel and industrial relations. Personnel added, welfare as a sub-department. Then in early 1980s, the HR champion movement started. Early adopters were companies like State Bank of India and BAIL. And then modern HR department, which aligns with business goals and strategies. So mainly to talk about it, contextualize HRM within the Indian setting. HRM in India has relatively has very recent formal history because it began in 1980s, and when academics like Uday Parekh and T.V. Rao introduced HRM frameworks, adapted it in Indian industrial and cultural context. And then early adopters were BAIL and State Bank of India, who were the pioneers in implementing structured HRM practices into their organizations. And the evolution mirrors the global pattern from purely industrial relations, managing disputes and unions, to personal administration, full strategic HRM. And mainly to talk about it, where in Indian context, if you see, human resources were always resources, and the human aspect has taken over very recently. And it's with these modern and multinational organizations coming in that the things have changed and have made a difference to it. Now, looking at towards the transformed HR department functions, here are a few of the pointers of participating in business strategy sessions, preparing strategies and HR planning, compensation, structure, career structuring, training development, and culture, etc. So the basically the right column, shows about HR department's roles, how it transformed from reactive compliance to proactive strategy mainly. We move to the next one. Here, this is a basic slide which will give you and give the objectives of human resource management and the factors of the management: societal objectives, organizational objectives, personal objectives, and functional objectives. So this is a basic theory which divides their functions or their objectives into different boxes. Say individual, societal, organizational, and functional. Functional is mainly towards maintaining the documentation purpose. Societal is to get into the legal, ethical compliance, and so on and so forth, which looks at the society needs. And organization is, it should be attached to the business strategies, it should be attached to the mission and the vision of the organization, and how it supports the organizational efficiency and effectiveness, and helps build to grow the organization. Personal is again individual employees or workforce for that matter. So this is basically the central subsystem. It's the core of any HRM, which gives and talks about the importance. It has a corporate significance, it has a social significance, a national significance, and a professional significance. And national significance is basically all about mainly when the companies are working through how they can have a symmetrical strategy behind every organization that works within or of the nation. So that's where the national significance comes into picture, builds human capital essential for economic development and growth overall, in terms of the contribution that every individual does towards the state, country, finances, so on and so forth. So, talking about the scope and nature, IIPM framework was firstly put into the scope where the nature of HRM was defined, and the framework has three aspects: labor, welfare aspect, and industrial relation aspect. And the nature, there are 10 pointers to it. They are pervasive, action-oriented, individual-oriented, people-oriented, and future-oriented as well. And while so, it is also having a nature of looking at development, hence development-oriented, integrating mechanism, comprehensive functions, auxiliary services, and interdisciplinary also because HRM draws a lot of concepts and perspective from psychology, sociology, and economics and puts it into their strategic factors so that overall there can be a balance between the society, the industry, and the human aspect of it. These are a few of the components, and I think we can continue in the next piece of it. So here are the components for you to actually look at which is the component that you would want to expertise in. Are you going to expertise into relationships and engagements, or utilization, accounting, audit is the piece of admin, systems, HRD, planning, organization is again one piece of it where, typically in the modern setup, there are three sets. One is HR admin or HBAP. Second is L&D, which is learning and development. And third is TA, which is talent acquisition. And within these three frames, you have all these aspects. And it is important for us to understand each of these aspects as well. So these are basically workflows and key takeaways. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will be taking up the next unit the next time. You all have a good time, and we'll be sharing more notes for your references. Thank you.